Welcome to Simply the Bible YouTube broadcast. We are beginning the Gospel of Luke today. I am very excited to start the Gospel according to Luke. It is one of my favorite books of the Bible. Although not an eyewitness himself, with the precision of an investigative reporter, Luke compiled his narrative by interviewing eyewitnesses. Luke was a traveling companion of the Apostle Paul and called the beloved physician. One characteristic of Luke's gospel is that 30% of it is not found in any of the other three gospels. Most of this is parables: the Good Samaritan, the rich fool, the lost sheep, the lost coin, the lost son or the prodigal son, the persistent widow, and the Pharisee and the tax collector. In addition, the narrative of the nativity of Gabriel appearing to Mary and then Mary and Joseph going to Bethlehem only appears in Luke's gospel. And only Luke gives us the account of the penitent thief on the cross. So the Holy Spirit has preserved four gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Each presents Christ from a slightly different perspective. Matthew was Jewish and wrote for Jews. He presents Jesus as the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Son of David, the rightful king. Matthew focuses on how Jesus fulfilled the Old Testament messianic prophecies. Mark was also Jewish, but he presents Jesus as the servant of all. His gospel moves quickly with lots of action. John presents Jesus as the Son of God, who was with God in the beginning and is God. Luke is the only New Testament author who was a Gentile, and he writes with a Gentile audience in view. The Greeks were interested in the ideal man, so Luke presents Jesus as the Son of Man, the ideal human who is worthy to be followed. So let's begin. The Gospel according to Luke. Inasmuch as many have taken in hand to set in order a narrative of those things which have been fulfilled among us, just as those who from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word delivered them to us, it seemed good to me also, having had perfect understanding of all things from the very first, to write to you an orderly account, most excellent Theophilus, that you may know the certainty of those things in which you were instructed. Luke addresses his gospel to Theophilus. The fact that he calls him most excellent Theophilus suggests that he was a man of high social status, since this was the same title often used in addressing high-ranking Roman officials. The name Theophilus literally means lover of God. He had been instructed in the way of the Lord, but perhaps questions or doubts had arisen in his mind. Were the things that he heard reliable? Were the testimonies trustworthy? Luke wrote this gospel and later the book of Acts to answer these concerns. Luke wrote that his purpose was that Theophilus and every other reader would know with certainty the things they had heard. With the methodical precision of a doctor making a diagnosis, Luke investigated all the evidence to make a case for Christ. Verse 5. There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias of the division of Abijah. His wife was of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. And they were both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of the Lord, blameless. But they had no child, because Elizabeth was barren, and they were both well advanced in years. This was the time of Herod the Great. Now he was appointed king by the Roman Senate, and although he was part Jewish, he was never accepted by the Jews. He was so paranoid and murderous, even against his own family. The people said it was safer to be Herod's pig than one of his sons. In contrast to Herod the Great was an obscure priest named Zacharias. Both he and his wife Elizabeth were descendants of Aaron, the brother of Moses and the first high priest of Israel. They were both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of the Lord, and were blameless. Now, that doesn't mean that they were sinless, because no one is sinless but Jesus. But they had a good reputation of being faithful to keep the commandments of the Lord. However, they had no children, for Elizabeth was barren. Now, in that culture, a fruitful womb was the sign of God's blessing. Elizabeth bore the reproach of being barren her entire life, and now she was well advanced in years, having likely gone through menopause. No doubt the couple had given up all hope of ever having a child. So it was that while he was serving as priest before God in the order of his division, according to the custom of the priesthood, his lot fell to burn incense when he went into the temple of the Lord. And the whole multitude of the people was praying outside at the hour of incense. Now, David had established 24 groups of priests. Each group would be on duty twice a year for a week at a time. Because there were so many priests, 20,000 at this time by some estimates, the honor of offering incense before the Lord was allowed to a priest only once in his lifetime, and then only by the casting of lots. Therefore, Zacharias had truly waited all his life for this opportunity. The incense was burned in the morning and evening on the golden altar before the veil that separated the holy place, where the priest went each day from the most holy place, where God dwelt and where only the high priest could go once a year on the Day of Atonement. While the priest would offer incense, the people prayed outside, and the incense going up before the Lord symbolized the prayers rising to heaven. Then an angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing on the right side of the altar of incense. And when Zacharias saw him, he was troubled, and fear fell upon him. Now, Luke tells us that the angel was Gabriel, and when Zacharias saw him, he was troubled, and fear fell upon him. I think angels must expect this, because they are always telling people, fear not. But the angel said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zacharias, for your prayer is heard, and your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you shall call his name John. And you will have joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth. For he will be great in the sight of the Lord, and shall drink neither wine nor strong drink. He will also be filled with the Holy Spirit, even from his mother's womb, and he will turn many of the children of Israel to the Lord their God. He will also go before him in the spirit and power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the disobedient to the wisdom of the just, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord." Zacharias had likely given up all hope on ever having a child. But even though we may forget our prayers, God never forgets. We never know when or how God will answer our prayers. We only know that the Lord commands us to ask and keep on asking, to pray without ceasing, to always pray, believing that we have what we've asked for. Now, his name would be John, which means the Lord is gracious. And in the same way that Isaac brought Abraham and Sarah laughter, so John would bring this elderly couple great joy. And many others would also rejoice, because his birth marked the fulfillment of God's promise to the nation. John would be set apart from birth. The fact that he would abstain from wine and strong drink probably indicated that he would be a Nazirite, like Samson. John would also be filled with the Holy Spirit. Now, Luke refers to the Holy Spirit more than any other gospel writer. While the Holy Spirit came upon many people in the Old Testament, John would be filled with the Spirit from his mother's womb. John would be God's instrument to bring revival to the nation. These were dark days in Israel. There hadn't been a prophet of God for 400 years. Israel was under occupation from the brutal Romans. Great corruption entered the priesthood. But John would turn the people back to Yahweh, their God. He would go forth in the spirit and power of Elijah. Now, 400 years earlier, the prophet Malachi wrote, "Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord, and he will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and strike the earth with a curse." John would fulfill this last prophecy of the Old Testament. And in the same way that Elijah boldly confronted rulers and turned the hearts of the people back to the Lord, John would confront Herod Antipas and prepare the people to receive Christ. And Zacharias said to the angel, "How shall I know this? For I am an old man, and my wife is well advanced in years." Zacharias believed in God, but not in the angel's words. He was too focused on the obstacles, his age, and, Elizabeth's age. And the angel answered and said to him, "I am Gabriel, who stands in the presence of God, and was sent to speak to you and bring you these glad tidings. But behold, you will be mute and not able to speak until the day these things take place, because you did not believe my words, which will be fulfilled in their own time." So God sent the angel Gabriel from his presence to bring Zacharias this good news and joy, but unbelief robbed Zacharias of the joy. Now, as a sign, he would be unable to speak until Elizabeth gave birth to John. He wanted a sign, well, there it was. Now, unbelief robs us of so much, really. But faith in God and in his good character and in his faithfulness to keep his promises brings life, peace, and joy in the Spirit. And it opens the door for his blessings. And the people waited for Zacharias and marveled that he lingered so long in the temple. But when he came out, he could not speak to them, and they perceived that he had seen a vision in the temple, for he beckoned to them and remained speechless. Outside, the people were waiting to be blessed by Zacharias when he came out. Now, what took him so long? When he did come out, instead of pronouncing the priestly blessing of number 6, he only made gestures. The people concluded that he had seen a vision. So it was, as soon as the days of his service were completed, that he departed to his own house. Now after those days, his wife Elizabeth conceived, and she hid herself 5 months, saying, "Thus the Lord has dealt with me in the days when he looked on me to take away my reproach among the people." Elizabeth conceived, just as Gabriel had said. But why did she hide herself away for 5 months? For her entire marriage she had borne the reproach of being a barren woman. Now she would give birth to a miracle child, and perhaps she was just giving her pregnancy time to become self-evident. When God is doing the work, we can wait on him to go before us and make it clear to everyone that it has happened by the Lord's hand. God was obviously arranging circumstances to prepare the way for the birth of his son. But Gabriel was not done with his task. 6 months later, he would visit a virgin living in Nazareth with some extraordinary news. But you'll have to join us tomorrow for the rest of the story. Well, thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy going through the New Testament. Also, you can check out the Old Testament with the Simply the Bible podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you for watching, and may God bless you.